the demons do not engage in production, their food supply relies entirely on what humans produce. Coupled with the fact that there are more people than resources, supplies are scarce, and prices are high. If it weren't for her two older brothers supporting her, Suninin, being a half-human, half-demon, would likely have starved to death long ago. Although she was a tree in her past life, Suninin was well aware of how much her brothers had sacrificed to raise her. She, too, tried to ease their burden in her own way. Before coming to the Moon Demon Palace, she would grow common vegetables and sell them for some demon crystals. Her brothers couldn't afford spiritual plant seeds, and their yard was too small to grow grains, so they compromised by cultivating fresh vegetables. Suninin picked the mature moonbloom flowers one by one and stored them. Once she saved enough demon crystals, she planned to buy some equipment for her two older brothers. Demons are not skilled in artifact forging, making suitable equipment extremely rare and hard to come by in the demon realm. It could only be obtained either from the battlefield, or through expensive custom orders from wandering merchants. If only she knew how to forge artifacts herself, she could personally craft gear tailored for her elder brothers. Her eldest brother excels with sharp blades, while her second brother prefers long whips. She remembered all of this clearly. Suninin was making plans in her heart, unaware that her wish would soon come true. At the end of the month, Zidali visited Suninin's residence and brought her some rare spiritual plant seeds and delicious food. Although the Moon Demon Palace provided meals, they mainly consisted of flour-based dishes. The food remained the same every day without any variation, and the taste could only be described as average. The only advantage was that it was filling. Of course, this was the food provided for servants. The meals for the masters were entirely different. The two siblings shared their recent experiences, exchanging information and joys with each other. "Big brother, next time you come, could you bring me some fresh fruits? I'm tired of eating bread every day. I gathered some wild fruits during this trip, though they're a bit sour. I plan to send them to your second brother to brew into fruit wine. Would you like to try some?" Zidali happened to recall the fruits he had collected and took out a few vibrant green plums while asking. Zidali's work is quite complex. He holds multiple roles. Sometimes he is dispatched on missions by the Moon Demon God, and other times he stays within the Moon Demon Palace for patrol duties. Looking at those unripe plums, Suninin couldn't help but swallow her saliva. They looked very sour, yet incredibly tempting. "I want to eat them," Suninin thought to herself as she reached out and took those green fruits, wiping their surfaces with her clothes before putting them into her mouth. Not too sour. The acidity is just right. Delicious. After finishing the fruits in her hand, Suninin looked at Zidali with bright eyes, asking if there were any more. Seeing her expectant gaze, Zidali couldn't help but smile and took out some more green fruits, stuffing them all into Suninin's hands. Watching his sister eat them one after another, Zidali felt both pleased and a bit puzzled. "Ninin, don't you find them very sour? The acidity is perfect. Big brother, do you have any more?" Wait. Something must be wrong with Ninin's health. He had tried these green fruits himself. They were so sour they were almost unbearable, yet Ninin had eaten every last one without even blinking. He had picked these green fruits before and given them to Ninin to try. Back then, she found them too sour and didn't like them, so Zidali took them all to brew into fruit wine. Zidali looked her over from head to toe. Everything seemed fine, even better. She had even gained some weight. It seemed she wasn't being bullied in the palace. Gained weight? Specifically around the waist. Shouldn't weight gain be distributed all over the body? Ninin, you gained weight. Gained weight? Have I? It does seem like I've put on a little bit, just a little, not much. The most noticeable increase was around her belly. Suninin pinched the extra flesh at her waist and fell into deep thought. Over the past few days, she had indeed been eating more. She would get hungry again not long after eating, and when hungry, she would eat again and cycle that led to weight gain. Although her previous form was a tree, she is now human and has adopted human ways of thinking. She doesn't like being overweight. It's true that she has gained a little weight. She really has put on some pounds. Ning, do you feel unwell anywhere? His intuition told him that something must be wrong with Ning's health. Seeing her elder brother's worried expression, Su Ning used her spiritual power to scan her entire body and discovered something unusual. When did two new life forces appear in her abdomen? Su Ning gently touched those unfamiliar energies with her spiritual tendrils. Instantly, her spiritual power was absorbed, and at that moment, she felt as if struck by lightning, her face filled with disbelief. Those two life forces are connected to her by blood. They are her children. Children. Su Ning couldn't help but recall the events from over 2 months ago. Just one night, and she became pregnant. With twins. Weren't high-level demons supposed to have difficulty conceiving offspring? Although she didn't know the true identity of that demon, judging by his appearance, he must have been a high-level demon. Su Ning had temporarily forgotten her innate talent as the Tree of Life. Although she was no longer the Tree of Life, her soul, having reincarnated as a human, had subtly influenced her current body. As long as she continued to cultivate and improve her abilities, one day she would gradually evolve toward the form of the Tree of Life. The children born from this body would also inherit the innate skills of her original Tree of Life form. Zidali observed every change in Su Ning's expression. Based on his understanding of Ning, he knew she must be hiding something from them. Ning, are you hiding something from me? Zidali's voice snapped Su Ning out of her daze. Big brother, don't get agitated, I'll tell you. Su Ning knew that her pregnancy could only be concealed temporarily, not forever. I'm pregnant. Su Ning blurted it out in one breath, quietly waiting for her brother's lecture. What did you say? Zidali couldn't control his volume upon hearing the news, drawing questioning glances from other patrolling teammates. Zidali waved his hand at his teammates to signal that everything was fine, then turned back to speak quietly with Su Ning. Who is the father of the child? When did this happen? Zidali urgently inquired. Under the intimidating glare of Zidali, Su Ning recounted the entire sequence of events. You don't know who the father is. You came to pick me up at the club that day. Why did you leave me there alone? Zidali fired off several questions in succession. No wonder he woke up in the club's restroom after sobering up that night. It turns out his sister abandoned him there for a handsome face. No wonder when he woke up the next morning, he saw Ning acting suspiciously. Was it only then that she remembered she had a brother? Most importantly, why did she go to a hotel with a strange demon? Su Ning observed Healy's micro-expressions and slowly explained her helplessness. On the day I went to pick you up, Bert made me drink a glass of wine so I could take you back. I never expected that halfway there, you would insist on going to the bathroom. I waited outside for a long time, but you never came out. Later, the alcohol started to take effect, and what happened next was beyond my control. Healy was taken aback, realizing that what Ning said was indeed true. Ning had a low tolerance for alcohol and became a completely different person after drinking. He had witnessed it only once before. Since then, both he and Healy had forbidden Ning from drinking outside, as it made her lose control and created messy situations. This time, it was particularly severe. She had completely let herself go. As for the part Ning hadn't mentioned, Healy automatically filled in the gaps in his mind. It must be that the demon was extremely good-looking and perfectly matched Ning's aesthetic preferences, otherwise Ning wouldn't have been so casual about living with him. The moon demons, regardless of age or gender, all have some degree of obsession with appearances, and Ning's is particularly severe. Healy's mind raced through one handsome face after another. Who could it possibly be? Among the moon demons, the only one more handsome than him is Lord Agar's. Could it be him? Impossible, right? Would Lord Agar's lack beautiful companions? Would he need to visit a club to find one? Healy immediately ruled out Agar's, only to realize that no other moon demon fit his speculation. Rubbing his temples in frustration, Healy wondered. What do you plan to do with this child? Keep it or remove it? Suning didn't hesitate at all. I want to keep it. Since I'm pregnant, I'll have the baby. Although the child came unexpectedly, she still wanted to keep them. After all, they were two lives, and she couldn't bear to give them up. Healy glanced sideways at Suning. Do you know how to raise a child? You're still relying on me and your second brother for support. How are you going to raise a child? Suning felt stung by Healy's words. It was true that she depended on her brothers for support, and she really didn't know how to raise a child. She didn't have many magic crystals either, so raising two children would likely be beyond her means. Her cultivation level was only at the 7th tier, which was considered below average among the moon demons. Being a half-human, half-demon hybrid, she couldn't cultivate as quickly as other pure-blooded moon demons. As the noble tree of life, she had actually fallen to such a state, truly like a tiger at the plain being bullied by dogs. She had truly disgraced the dignity of the tree of life. No, wait. She was human now, not the tree of life, so it was just plain embarrassing. She would cultivate more spiritual plants and exchange them for magic crystals. Sooner or later, she would have enough. If only she could contact her original form. All the treasures she had collected before were stored in her innate space. If she could take out just one or two of them, she could easily support dozens of herself. Unfortunately, ever since her reincarnation, the connection to her original form had been severed. She estimated that she would need to reach the 9th tier of cultivation to perform the secret art and reconnect with her original form. Suning said with determined eyes, Big brother, don't worry. I will work hard to earn magic crystals. With the abundance of dark elements here, I can grow plenty of spiritual plants, which can be exchanged for a significant amount of magic crystals. Healy resisted the urge to tap Suning on the forehead. His sister had grown up. He could no longer treat her like a child by tapping her forehead. What could he do to teach his naive and adorable sister a lesson? Deep down, Healy didn't want Suning to keep the child. She was still young, and pregnancy would drain her vitality. But the child was already nearly 3 months along, and terminating it would also harm Ning's health. If he ever found out which moon demon had taken advantage of his sister, well. Ning, take good care of yourself during the pregnancy. Don't overexert yourself, it's not good for you or the baby. After speaking with Suning for a while, Healy couldn't stay much longer. Before leaving, Healy reminded Suning to take good care of herself and promised to visit her again next month. After Healy departed, Suning finally relaxed. Thankfully, her elder brother hadn't pressured her to terminate the pregnancy. Suning couldn't help but think about the future. Raising children would indeed be a burden. Should she try to find the father of the children and ask him to share some of the responsibility? Judging by his attire, he seemed quite wealthy. But where should she start looking? She didn't even know his name, so she could only leave it to fate. For now, she would take things one step at a time. Her priority was to improve her strength and reach the 9th tier as soon as possible to reconnect with her original form. Unbeknownst to Suning, her original form had awakened shortly after she reincarnated into the Saint Demon continent. Following the traces she left behind, her original form had arrived just outside the Saint Demon continent. However, at that time, Suning had already reincarnated as a human. Her soul was influenced by the loss of the Saint Demon continent, temporarily severing the connection with her original form. The original form could only wait for Su Ningning to initiate contact to reconnect. Sighing softly, Su Ningning immersed herself in cultivation once more. Although the Moon Demon Palace offered little freedom, it was rich in dark elements. Cultivating here allowed her to break through faster. Just as Su Ningning focused on her cultivation, the tiny lives within her womb quietly began to emanate their own aura. As the ruler of the Moon Demon Palace, Agars quickly detected the two unfamiliar auras. His first reaction was that someone had invaded his domain, but then he sensed that the auras shared the same origin as his own. It wasn't an enemy, it was his own bloodline calling out to him. Did he have direct descendants? Though the faint auras lasted only a few moments, Agars instantly pinpointed their exact location. The northeastern part of the inner palace. This was precisely where Su Ningning was located. Without a second thought, Agars arrived at the location where the aura had first appeared in the blink of an eye. His divine sense swept through the entire palace, finding only one person inside. When he saw the person's face, he paused for a moment. It was her. Agars recalled the incident at the Demon Metropolis Club 3 months ago. After that night, Su Ningning had left without ever seeking him out. Agars had assumed she wanted nothing to do with him, which was why he hadn't gone looking for her either. Among the demon race, matters of romance and intimacy were not taken too seriously as long as both parties consented. That was enough. With a flick of his finger, Agars altered the surroundings, and Su Ningning instantly collapsed, unconscious. The next moment, Agars appeared by Su Ningning's bedside, quietly gazing at her serene and beautiful sleeping face before his eyes settled on her abdomen. Placing a hand over her belly, he felt the two auras connected to his own bloodline, and he couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Indeed, they were his descendants. High-ranking demons possess a weaker ability to reproduce, and the higher their cultivation level, the more diminished this ability becomes. He could not allow his bloodline to remain outside. Moon Devil Palace. Agaratha's bedchamber. Su Ningning still hadn't woken up, completely unaware of everything happening outside, not knowing she had already been moved to a different palace to sleep. Gazing at Su Ningning's defenseless sleeping posture, Agarath couldn't help but gently stroke her cheek and caress her delicate jawline. Su Ningning let out a dissatisfied murmur, then reached out and swatted Agaratha's mischievous hand before falling back asleep, showing no signs of waking up at all. Amused by Su Ningning's reaction, Agarath couldn't help but think to himself. She truly has no sense of danger. Agarath did not continue to tease Su Ningning. Instead, he placed both hands on her belly. This was where his offspring was growing, and at this thought, Agaratha's expression softened. He had just used his spiritual power to check Su Ningning's physical condition. The mother's body was fine, but the child was somewhat weak, likely due to overuse of spiritual energy. Agarath carefully channeled a substantial amount of pure spiritual power into her womb. Sensing the spiritual energy Agarath was infusing, two distinct auras eagerly absorbed it. The previously faint auras gradually became stable. The auras they had just released had exhausted their accumulated spiritual energy. At this moment, Agaratha's spiritual energy replenished their losses, making their auras even stronger. Agarath continued to channel a considerable amount of spiritual energy until their condition stabilized completely. Then he stopped. Infusing too much spiritual energy at once would hinder their growth. Haste makes waste. Sensing that the spiritual energy had ceased, the two auras protested slightly. Agarath gently said, "You are still young. The spiritual energy just now is enough for you to absorb. I will continue to infuse spiritual energy for you in the future." Realizing that Agarath would not continue to provide spiritual energy, the two auras quieted down, slowly converting the absorbed spiritual energy for their own use, no longer paying attention to Agarath. Truly, when there's something to gain, they know how to yield. Without it, they become indifferent, acting as if he doesn't exist. He wondered whose temperament they had inherited, certainly their mother's. Agarath still vividly remembered that night. It was Suninin who took the initiative. After consuming him completely, she simply walked away without a second thought, utterly heartless. However, they know how to care for their mother. Realizing that Suninin alone cannot provide the spiritual energy they need, they subtly released their auras to attract his attention. To avoid harming Suninin, they even chose to consume their own bloodline power to summon him. After tucking in the blanket to ensure Suninin wouldn't catch a chill and setting up a protective array in the bedchamber, Agarath finally stepped out. As the Moon Devil God, he constantly faces assassination attempts from human powerhouses, leaving him no choice but to remain vigilant. Agarath glanced toward a shadow in the palace and said, "Callery, go investigate her." A 9th-level Moon Devil emerged from the shadows, kneeling on one knee and respectfully replying, "I will handle it immediately." A few hours later, Agarath received all the information about Suninin. Suninin, 20 years old, has 2 older brothers, Sidley and Sidri, both working under him. To escape Belter's harassment, Suninin came to the Moon Devil Palace 2 months ago and became a gardener. When Agarath heard the name Suninin, he initially felt somewhat familiar. Belter had once asked him for someone, and that person was Suninin. Combined with the information in the dossier, all the details aligned perfectly. Agarath's eyes suddenly turned dangerous. How dare he set his sights on his woman? If Suninin hadn't entered the Moon Devil Palace, Belter would likely have gotten his hands on her by now. Whether his children would have survived would have been uncertain. No man would tolerate his woman carrying another man's child. How should Belter be punished? Agarath murmured to himself, needing to devise a way to make Belter vanish from his sight. In the past, Agarath might have tolerated Belter's existence, but now he only wished to eliminate him without delay. It wasn't just because of Suninin. Another reason was that Belter was a pure-blooded Moon Devil, who harbored deep-seated hatred for human devil hybrids and would ruthlessly eliminate them. Agarath himself carried human blood and had secretly established an organization whose members all had some degree of human lineage. However, he needed to devise a foolproof plan for how to proceed. The next day, a soft moan echoed in the silent bedchamber as Suninin awoke on the 3-meter-wide bed. She rose lazily, the blanket slipping from her body. Suninin opened her eyes and gazed bewildered at the unfamiliar surroundings, her mind momentarily blank. Where was she? Shouldn't she be in her simple, humble palace? The lavish and extravagant decor around her clearly didn't match her original dwelling. Who had brought her here? Who would dare to abduct her within the Moon Devil Palace, as if the Moon Devil God didn't exist? Could it be Belter? Suninin considered this possibility, her expression turning serious. She looked down at herself. Her clothes were still the same ones she had worn yesterday, still properly on her body, albeit slightly wrinkled. She didn't feel any physical discomfort, so Belter probably hadn't done anything to her yet. Thinking this, Suninin quickly pushed aside the purple silk blanket and tried to leave. As she reached the palace entrance, a barrier blocked her way. Unable to hold back her frustration, she struck the barrier several times in anger. Then Belter, did he intend to keep her locked up here? No matter what, she had to escape, even if it meant severely injuring herself to break through the barrier. Just as Suninin prepared to use a secret technique, the barrier vanished into thin air, and a person appeared before her. "It's you?" Seeing the person who arrived, Suninin stood frozen in place, unable to move. "That's right, it's me. Let me reintroduce myself. I am the Moon Devil God, Agarath." Agarath sensed the barrier being disturbed and guessed that Suninin had likely awakened. He immediately set aside his tasks and hurried back. He hadn't forgotten about Belter's harassment of Suninin. If she thought it was Belter who imprisoned her, Things would be terrible. Upon learning his identity, Suninin was stunned on the spot. She truly hadn't expected the father of her child to be the moon devil god. She was now caught between joy and sorrow, unsure how to feel. Should she be happy or sad? On the bright side, the moon devil god would help raise her child, and she would have a powerful backer. On the worrying side, she didn't want to become the moon devil god's concubine, but could she refuse? Belter alone had forced her to take refuge in the moon devil palace. Now that she had provoked the moon devil god, would she ever be able to pursue another man in the future? Suninin's mind suddenly conjured up a scene. She was on a date with another man, and Agarath caught them. Agarath would simply kill both her and the man. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. No, she absolutely couldn't let something like that happen. She, Suninin, was the tree of life. It was impossible for her to have just one man. At least three, so it sounded better when mentioned. Her dream was to have a whole forest. She couldn't hang herself on Agarath alone. Of course, her current strength wasn't enough to oppose Agarath. Either she would find a man stronger than Agarath in the future, or she would become stronger than him. At the very least, she would have to be careful and ensure Agarath never found out about the existence of other men. For now, she would lay low. Once she gained enough strength, she would go find a bunch of handsome men. Knowing that she wasn't imprisoned by Bert, Suninin finally felt relieved. It was just as well that the child's father knew about the baby. Her burden had lightened. Suninin wasn't worried at all about whether her child would favor the father. In her Tree of Life clan, children were always closer to their mothers. If forced to choose between father and mother, her child would undoubtedly pick her without hesitation. But isn't it inappropriate for me to keep living in your palace? Suninin voiced her concerns. She was currently under someone else's roof and had no choice but to bow her head. This was only her second time meeting Agarath, and she still didn't understand his character. Initially, she had been drawn to Agarath because of his looks, unaware that he was the moon demon god. Even though the child in her womb was Agarath's, that didn't mean she would compromise herself and stay with him. If Agarath were to be with other women in the future, she would absolutely never let him touch her again. A man who didn't uphold male virtue, no matter how handsome he was, she would never force herself to accept him. No need. You're still pregnant, so stay here with me for now. Once the child is born, you can move to another palace. Agarath understood the meaning behind Suninin's words and directly stated his thoughts. Suninin was carrying his child, and in the future, they would be his heirs. One woman is enough. Too many women lead to too much conflict. He didn't want his harem to become as chaotic and unpleasant as the previous moon demon gods. With just Suninin, he was content. Why would he need so many women? He'd have to provide for them all without getting anything in return. There's already so much to handle among the demon clans. He's busy enough. On top of that, he has to constantly play mind games with the demon god emperor. It's exhausting. He certainly doesn't want to come back to a flock of chattering, twittering women. Just hearing them would be annoying. Are you hungry? Would you like something to eat? I'll have the maid bring the food. Suninin's stomach chose that moment to rumble. She was indeed hungry. At Agarath's summons, the maid brought the dishes to the table. Seeing the spread of exquisite delicacies, Suninin felt even hungrier. She could devour it all. Without any hesitation, she began to eat, not paying attention to whether Agarath was eating or not. She was now eating for three. If she didn't eat enough, her children would go hungry. The moon demon god certainly knew how to enjoy life. She tasted many delicious foods. Thinking about the hardships she had endured and comparing them to the luxury around her created a stark contrast, but it didn't take long for Suninin to set those thoughts aside. She was only 20 years old, while Agarath had struggled for who knows how many years to achieve such a lavish lifestyle. Given a few more years, she could do the same. Full and satisfied, Su Ningning stroked her belly, feeling the child inside greeting her, and a smile unconsciously spread across her face. Agarath had been watching Su Ningning's every move and didn't miss that smile. He felt his heart stir. Perhaps he had truly fallen for Su Ningning. With her, he could no longer find any appeal in other ordinary women. By her side, he sensed her vibrant life force and an unprecedented sense of peace. Su Ningning was like a beam of light, illuminating his dark world and guiding the path ahead for him. Agarath noticed Su Ningning's unease and suggested, "If you miss your brother, I can have the maid summon him. Your eldest brother is out on a mission right now, but your second brother is still in the palace." Agarath knew the siblings shared a deep bond, and in his absence, Silly could help soothe Su Ningning's restless mood. Just then, a moon demon arrived with a message. The demon god emperor was summoning him. When the emperor called, he couldn't stay by Su Ningning's side indefinitely. Before leaving, Agarath channeled a substantial amount of spiritual energy to the children in her womb to calm them. Children in their growth phase require substantial spiritual energy. A lack of it could lead to their poor development or harm the mother's body. From Agarath's series of actions, Su Ningning deduced that he likely had to go out. Considerately, she said, "I'll take good care of myself. If you have matters to attend to, please go ahead." With Su Ningning's reassurance, Agarath didn't linger any longer and left the chamber. The moment he was gone, Su Ningning immediately shed all restraints, lying down on the bed. It was truly comfortable. She had slept very soundly in it the night before. From Agarath's level of concern for the children in her womb, Su Ningning deduced that the children must have used their bloodline connection to reach out to him. Though small, they could faintly sense the outside world and their mother's emotions. Knowing she was struggling to nurture them, they released their aura to seek out other blood relatives. Su Ningning didn't blame the children at all for revealing her existence. They did it for her sake. If she couldn't provide the spiritual energy needed for their growth, it might lead to stillbirth. And if she insisted on using her own spiritual energy and everything she had to sustain them, she would suffer severe damage. Su Ningning was unwilling to accept either scenario, finding their father was the wisest course of action. She wasn't in the mood to cultivate at the moment and realized it had been a long time since she'd seen her second brother. On a whim, she asked the maid to summon him so they could catch up properly. Meanwhile, on the other side, Silly heard that a maid from Agarath's retinue was summoning him and didn't dare delay, promptly arriving at the palace. But instead of Agarath, it was Su Ningning who appeared before him. The moment Silly saw Su Ningning, he was momentarily stunned. Wasn't this Agarath's palace? Why was Ningning here? Silly was filled with confusion and couldn't help but blurt out, "Ningning, why are you in Lord Agarath's palace? And it's only been 2 months since we last met. How did you get chubbier?" Hearing the latter part of her second brother's remark, Su Ningning's face instantly turned pale. No woman appreciates being told she's gained weight.